AskReddit by I love small breasts. What's something you had to explain to someone that you thought was common knowledge? Hail is not actually just a joke the weatherman makes. To my college roommate. That the Spanish language is not called Mexican. Though Mexican is a dialect. I had to explain to my friend the direction she was facing wasn't always north when we were way too old for me to have to explain it. In high school I had to explain to someone wondering about standby REM that no matter where you were on the planet it is physically possible to face north. You might be looking directly at a wall but north is still in that direction. How to reset a trip circuit breaker. The homeowner didn't understand that you must first turn the tripped breaker all the way off before resetting it to the on position. He kept trying to force the breaker on, even when told how to do it correctly. There was nothing wrong with the circuit. My father did this last weekend with a GFCI. He kept pushing reset and was like, why isn't this turning on? Then I pointed out you have to hit test, so it fully disengages and the other button pops out all the way, and then reset. I have a long running joke with my much younger sisters about explaining to them who the band on their t-shirt is: Sublime, Guns N' Roses, Nirvana, etc. I know this is a typical neck but older brother thing to do, which is why I try so hard to make it absolutely ridiculous. I love this. The Holocaust. It's really sad that Holocaust denial is as common as it is. It makes me worry a lot for the future when so many millions of human beings can be systematically destroyed and yet barely a few generations later, people debate whether it happened at all. Homeopathy is complete and utter bullshit. Homeopathy is BS but the placebo effect is very much a real thing. Years back I went over to my buddy's house to hang out and watch a game. He asked if I wanted some french fries. I said absolutely. Half HR goes by and I can hear from the living room that he's having some issues. I went into the kitchen and asked what's wrong. He can't figure out how to fry these french fries. I look over and this goon is trying to make fries in a pot of boiling water. It didn't dawn on this stooge that you needed oil of some sort. I still have no idea how he's made it to 40. When I was young, one of my brothers tried to make macaroni and cheese by first cooking the dry macaroni in a pot without water. Not smart. Even worse, he deduced the problem was that he hadn't used a non-stick pot. 2 pots ruined. People couldn't walk around the Berlin Wall, it went around West Berlin. That Slovakia isn't Russia's little brother since Slovakia is a whole country apart and not allies. It depends how far back in history you want to talk about, and how some still just can't quite let it go. See v. Putin. Ducks can fly. Ducks can what? That for you to drill something in you first have to make a hole needed to explain to my grandmother while I was adding wheels to the sofa. She even argued with me. That ice takes up space and so yes your drink doesn't fill the entire cup when you take the ice out. You are not Einstein for realizing this. TikTok drives me crazy sometimes. Eureka. 1. Milk doesn't just come from Costco and appears in the jugs, to my brother. 2. How common knowledge ain't so common anymore. Common knowledge stops being common when people assume it doesn't need to be taught. Why you shouldn't elbow punch people if they annoy you. That you can't throw a cat out of a 3-story window. No cats harmed BTW. Well, you can. That the sun is not 7 football fields away, and it is actually 93 million miles away. No, I'm not joking. They are just really large football fields. What the backspace key did on a keyboard. They'd be manually selecting the text they wanted to remove, and pressing the delete key every time. Just because an idea is patented doesn't mean it's actually in use. A lot of people also don't realize that simply patenting an invention doesn't mean that the inventor will have total rights to it forever. Long subtraction. To a friend doing a finance degree. Wait, I know long division, but isn't long subtraction just one number over the other? That being Australian doesn't mean I write kangaroos or any of the typical Australian stereotypes. Bullshit. FT Knox no longer contains gold equal to the value of all US dollars. I use myself as an example. I never made my bed as a kid. I have a weird mix of ADHD and odd where I won't do shit without people telling me why. And I hate it because I said so. When I turned 23, I asked my mom out the blue why do people make their beds, and she replied so the beds and pillows don't get dirty. Afterwards, I made my bed daily. I was one of those gifted kids in school, but I really hope in the future for parents that just because your kid is smarter than normal, doesn't mean you take a slightly less hands-on approach. Teach us still, we need it. Why would pillows and blankets left on the bed get dirty simply for not being made? Or would they like be on the floor or something? I've always been average intelligent and have always hated when adults assume I know stuff before being told about things. How to tell if coffee grounds had been used. I've never made coffee, so I don't know this. There's also no reason for me to know this since I don't even own a coffee maker. Chicago is not a state. How to pump gas at a gas station. IDK I grew up pumping gas at a gas station for my mom when she gassed up. That was normal part of life for most people I knew. But my soul was sheltered and had no clue what to do with a gas pump. Threw me off when I had to explain it. Not all the Jews died in the Holocaust. There are still Jews. Explain to a college student. Had to explain to an adult what fire hydrants were used for. Also had to explain to this person that painkillers didn't target specific parts of the body. They thought there was separate painkiller for headaches, foot pain, toothaches, back pain, etc. That gasoline comes from oil. When I was in high school, I was driving a friend to his house and he said he lived off a street called Mountain Ave. And I was like, what Mountain Ave? And he's like, yeah, look, it's that street right here. And I was like, you mean Mountain Avenue? TBF, I know loads of people who will abbreviate Avenue to Ave in casual conversation. I might do it myself, but I'm now thinking about it so instantly have no idea how I talk. The very first couple of formulas we learned in math for parallelograms, 4-sided and 3-sided shapes. I have to constantly explain to my parents that I have severe depression, anxiety, personality disorder and emotional instability and how they should treat me with those, but they simply ignore it and say that it's nothing bad, and whenever I have emotional outbursts they play the victim card and sometimes threaten me with violence, which is no way to treat someone with emotional instability. I'm so sorry. I hope you have other support in your life. Had to explain to my previous boyfriend, M29, that when you buy health insurance you can't just claim off it straight away and that there are waiting periods. Otherwise everyone who has to have costly medical treatments would just sign up and cancel again after claiming money off it. To be fair, I didn't know that either. But then again, I'm Canadian. A lot of the weird medical stuff in the States makes so little sense to me. I hear of things like deductibles and health insurance gotchas and it's just so bizarre to me. Then in the same breath I have my American family tell me how much I hate my own healthcare. Sigh. How to right click a mouse SMH. The bumpy backside of your toothbrush is for brushing your tongue. I knew a girl who had no idea it was for your tongue and she said she used it to brush her gums. No one brushes their teeth anyway. 25 years ago, I had to explain to our office secretary about the Johnstown flood even though she had grown up in the Johnstown, Pennsylvania region. For your information, the Johnstown flood was an 1889 dam collapse that killed over 2,000 people. She was also unfamiliar with Uncle Tom's Cabin. That English comes from England, not America. Once watched an intern who was nevertheless a whole adult with a college degree throw an entire stapler away because it ran out of staples. Genuinely blew her mind when I fished it out and showed her how to open it up and refill. So basically everyone has to learn something for the first time and may learn it later in life. I just had to break the news to someone that Michael Jackson died. That pale ale exists and that the scene from American Pie was referencing an actual name of a product rather than some made up slang for cummy beer. I had a friend who didn't know how to boil water. He was left at home for a night while his mom was camping and he didn't know how to make ramen. When I was in college I worked on campus on the custodial crew. We had this one kid whose parents were really rich in Asia. Had to teach him how to sweep, how to mop, how to dust. There are people living outside us and UK and they don't give a fuck about your first world problems. There's more to Manhattan than Midtown and downtown. A girl was convinced I was wrong for saying I live in Manhattan because she never heard of my neighborhood. I had to explain to my first ever girlfriend, she was 17 at the time, I was 18, that women are pregnant for 9 months. She was convinced her neighbor was 10 months pregnant. Theoretically possible, could have been 4 weeks late. My first son was 2 weeks late. Yes, they usually induce before that, but it could have happened I suppose. I had to explain to someone, a grown adult, the difference between respiration and breathing, which is something I teach to 11-year-olds. They flat out refused to accept that they weren't the same thing even after I explained it multiple times. They insisted that they were the same thing. Apparently EDSA and the People's Power Revolution was just propaganda and it never happened. This came from the person who was a young man when it actually happened. He's also a massive homophobe, but he'd be homeless and dead if it weren't for his gay son who is supporting him. My uncle is stupid and hateful. He blamed black people for his alcoholism. I had to explain to a co-worker that China, Japan, and South Korea are in fact 3 separate countries. He thought they were different states in the same country. Nice guy, but he's dumb as a brick. Well, you see, if they wanted to use the vaccine to give you a tracking chip or whatever, they would just use ivermectin, or an existing vaccine everyone already uses. There's nothing nefarious going on. Could apply to any conspiracy theory, once examined. How to make a grilled cheese sandwich. To a medical student at a